Are we rolling? Yes, we are. What's up, guys? It's your boy McKinley Crain here, and today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free movie review of the 2019 drama horror movie, um, which I watched almost a week ago. Watched it last Sunday. Which is The Lighthouse. So, like I said, The Lighthouse is a 2019 drama horror movie, and it stars Willem Dafoe as Thomas Wake and Robert Pattinson as Thomas Howard. And Thomas Wake and Thomas Howard are two lighthouse keepers who are basically stuck on an island. Well, not really, stuck, but not really stuck. I mean, they weren't like shipwrecked or anything. They were on that island because it was their job. That island had a lighthouse on it, and they were lighthouse keepers. And this movie takes place in the 1890s. So the late 1800s, aka the late 19th century. And it takes place like on like a little island off of New England. And this movie is just perfect. It's a perfect movie, and it's awesome. And I'm gonna get into that in a minute, but first I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about the plot. And so basically, yeah, like I said, these two lighthouse keepers are like basically stuck on this island for work, and they things like a lot of like weird stuff starts happening, like a lot of supernatural type stuff starts like happening to them, and they start like losing it, and they start having like trust issues with one another, and they start like losing kind of like losing their minds, if you know what I mean. And this creates a lot of tension between them. These characters are very paranoid characters, as you can say. Um, it's like this movie has kind of like a claustrophobic setting, and I love that. It like it improves the claustrophobic setting of this movie, like you know basically like makes this movie's like whole like tone, like intense like tone and mood just even better. And it like it's part of what makes it so great. And it's this, like I said, the tone of this movie is like very very intense, very like it's like a very paranoid kind of tone. It's like it's like a like just a very intense kind of like what's gonna happen kind of tone and mood. And it's great. It's perfect. It works. And these two lighthouse keepers obviously start having trust issues with one another. Um, and this whole movie is basically about like what happens between like what happens like between them, like, and whether or not they both descend into madness or not, like completely into madness or not. And it's awesome. It's perfect. I expected The Lighthouse to be great, but I didn't expect it to be perfect. But it is a perfect movie, and it's a perfect horror movie. And this movie has amazing cinematography. Um, if you already didn't know that, this movie is, um, it's not an old movie at all. It came out in late 2019. Um, but it came out in late 2019 when most of the most movies that come out like most it came out in late 2019 when most of the movies that came out were like in color. Pretty much all of the movies that came out were like in color, except for the ones that were like purposely not in color, like this one. This movie is in black and white, but that's on purpose. The whole black and white like cinematography, like of this movie, and the whole black and white just setting is to create a certain atmosphere, like a certain dark and gritty atmosphere, and it works, and it's perfect. It's perfectly done. I love the black and white, just the whole black and white tone, the whole black and white like cinematography and just setting of this movie. It's perfect, and it gives this movie a just a really dark tone and dark feel when you're watching it. And speaking of the cinematography, there are like a lot of really good shots in this movie, like a lot of really good like camera shots that work very well, and were just perfectly done, and were just so they just felt so like perfect, and they were perfect. Um, and these do like these do make a lot of these camera shots and like camera angles like do help like do really help like set the mood and the tone. They What I'm saying is like the camera angles and like of this movie, and like where they pointing the camera when they filmed this movie, and like the overall a lot of the overall a lot of the overall camera cinematography, like made this movie what it is. It made this movie so great. Like a lot of these like scenes, a lot of like small parts of scenes, and a lot of scenes that were shot at a certain angle, you know, work work, and they work partly because of the angle that they were shot at. Like they could have been shot at a certain angle, like a normal angle or something, with the camera or whatever camera they were with whatever camera they were using to film this movie, whatever kind of camera. But they wouldn't have been as good if they were shot normally as they are here. Like a lot of these shots are just like all of these shots are perfect. Like every single one of these shots, every single one of the shots in this movie are like perfect. This whole movie's perfect. Like these shots, like there are a whole lot of shots in this movie that if they, like I said, if they were shot at just a normal camera angle, they wouldn't be as good. But since they weren't, you know they're better than better than they would have been, and they're perfect. Like that one you just saw. Anyway, I love this whole movie. It's awesome. It's very intense. It has a very intense tone. It's like it is a horror movie. But it's got a lot of drama in there too, and some humor in there. And the drama in this movie works, and it's perfect. And I love like a lot of I love all of the dialogue between these two characters, which are Thomas Wake and Thomas Howard. You know, the dialogue creates tension, and builds character, and like just really creates tension between these characters. Um, and just really helps you like see where like both of the characters are, if that makes sense. Like, see, like, what I'm saying is, like, the dialogue, like, helps us, like, helps whoever's watching the movie, like, understand the characters, understand these two characters and what their motivations are. And I love the chemistry between these two characters. Um, it's just, these two characters are just really fun to watch. Like, when they communicate with each other, it's like really fun. It's really fun. It's really fun to just watch. Um, and I love this movie. It was perfect. Um, it had like I said, a really intense tone, and it and that just the intense tone, is part of what made the whole movie like so great and so perfect. Anyway, and there, like I said, there is some humor in this movie. Even though this is a horror movie, it's a drama horror movie. But there is a little bit of humor in this movie, and the humor is smart, and it all works. Some of the humor in this movie, like if it hadn't been like done, like executed properly in this movie, it would have been bad humor. But like this movie, the people who like made this movie, they knew how to like they knew when and where like that kind of joke would work, and they nailed it. The all of the humor in this movie is perfect and it works. Um, and I this is a horror movie, right? This is a horror movie, so yeah, there's a lot of horror in this movie, like horror elements in this movie, and they're like some like some jump scares, if you know what I mean. Well, not like full blown jump scares, but like technically jump scares if you think about it, and they work. And there's like a lot of psychological horror in this movie, because this movie is more of a psychological horror movie than it is like than it is like one of those horror movies where like a lot of the horror comes from like jump scares and stuff like that. Even though this movie does have some jump scares, it's mostly a psychological horror film. And a lot of all of it works. This movie just, it works. It's awesome. The acting is perfect. Everything in this movie is perfect. In my opinion, both Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson give equally great performances, and over the top in a good way. Equally great performances, and they give very convincing performances, and both of the characters' dialogue are just awesome. It's just awesome, and everything in this movie is smartly written, like cleverly written. The ending is clever. Just the whole story is very clever. The dialogue between the characters is clever. This is just a witty movie, and it's a really fun movie, and it can get like bonkers at certain times, but like bonkers in a good way, like ridiculous in a good way, if you know what I mean, in a fun way that really benefits this movie. And this movie was just awesome, and it was really like it was just a really fun watch. And this movie isn't really for everyone. I mean, there are a lot of people who hate this kind of movie and would consider this kind of movie boring. And if you're one of those people, then you probably won't like this kind of movie. Like, if you know what I'm saying, if you don't like horror movies, or if you don't like psychological horror movies, or just any kind of horror movie, or like if you don't like movies where like there's like the whole story is basically like about like just character, like how two characters like interact with each other. Like, if you don't like claustrophobic movies, if that makes sense, then you're probably not gonna like this movie. But if you're like me and you like this kind of movie, then you will probably like this movie. I honestly can't guarantee you that. When I make these reviews, I honestly can't actually guarantee to everybody who clicks on this video and watches it that they're gonna like any movie, no matter how perfect or great or good or bad I may say it is or think it is, because I can't read people's minds, and everybody's mind is different, and everybody has different preferences when it comes to movies and music and stuff, and just different tastes in movies, and just you know everybody's different. So I can't guarantee to anybody when I make these reviews that they'll definitely like the movie I'm reviewing, or hate the movie I'm reviewing, or have mixed feelings on the movie I'm reviewing. But I can just tell you what I think, and what you're probably gonna like, if you'll probably like it or not, or hate it or not. If you know what I mean. Anyway, if you're if you're like me and you love this kind of movie, then you'll probably like it. I just explained why I can't just flat out say I know you're gonna love it, because I can't read your mind, but you know what I'm saying. You'll most likely love it. Anyway, I love this movie. It's perfect. Just everything is perfect. It's well executed. It's perfectly executed. It's perfectly edited, and a lot of the audio in this movie just works, and improves the whole claustrophobic, intense kind of edgy feeling of this movie. And this movie can be very disturbing at times, but disturbing, shocking, and unsettling at times. But it's of course disturbing, settling, and unshocking in a good way that benefits this movie, because this is a horror movie. And I love it. It's a perfect movie, and I loved it. Anyway, I'm gonna give this movie a 100% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an A+. Like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.